All right, so now we've got it apart where we can try this bearing greaser out and see how it works. I've checked the other three, everything's tight on the other three bearings. This one had just a slight bit of play in it. I'm just trying to get ahead of the game, so we'll set it up and grease it and see how it works. Alright, so what we've got is this 30mm bearing greaser, and it's got 2 O-rings, and when we put this in there, that groove is going to match up with that groove in the middle of the bearing there, and the O-rings keep it from coming out and it forces grease into it. Now we'll see how it works. We're just going to lube up the O-rings. And see if we can fit it in here. Alright, you can see it's inserted. Pushed it in until it was flush. We'll, got a locking end on this lock and lube fitting on the grease gun. So I'll hold that in there, and hopefully we can force some grease in there. We don't want to get too much for blowing the seals out. I could just see that bearing move, so I may just go until I see a little coming out of the seals. I can hear it taking grease. It's taking more than I thought it would so far. Alright. Let's unhook this. Pull it out of there and see what we got. You can see the channel there is full of grease. So looks like we're getting some grease in there. As for gee whiz, let's try putting it in here the other way. Same groove, we'll just try something a little different. Lock our lock and lube on there. Definitely taking grease. Here we go. So we can push a little of that old grease out. All right. Pull the tool out. Maybe push from the other side. There we go. You can see kind of the same thing this side. It started to push a little old grease out, so we're just going to stop there. And you can see how that channel filled up with grease. Pretty neat little tool. So we run the machine in water some. I can't say it's a very frequent happening. However, you can get water intrusion into these bearings by pressure washing also. Probably do more of that than soaking it in water, but I've got a friend that has one of these machines and he keeps it in water constantly, and I think he said 1,200 miles or so he's put 2 wheel bearings in, but that's to be expected if you're I would say if you're keeping it in water and mud. Still pretty durable. It just goes with anything. If considered severe service, you just cut your maintenance time in half, or some people like myself maybe go a little overboard with that, but that's better than replacing parts. And you could tell when we took this out of here, the bushings, the bolts still had plenty of grease. Every other ride I hit these grease fittings. Something real helpful is a 90-degree grease fitting for the end of this gun, where you can just slide it on, so if you get tight suspension parts, it's real easy to get in there. That's a big time saver. Otherwise you're generally getting a jack and trying to jack the suspension up and get the arm at the right angle so you can get either this long one or a regular one on there, but that 90-degree fitting makes maintenance a whole lot easier. So we'll put this back together and see what we got. Alright, so we're going to start putting this spindle back on here. Get this back together. I've already hit the grease fittings here. I'm gonna get something to clean up this bottom bolt. It was pretty dirty. That's not too bad. Grab the right wrench, it probably helps. All right. going to get that rotor and hub cleaned up, and I'll come back. Alright, little overseas on those splines. That will be back on there. So a little tip, when you go to put this hub back on here, you want to get that hole through your cotter pin kind of in the middle of these studs, so when you're tapping your pin in or wrangling with it, you don't goober up your wheel studs. Alright, what I have here is a Perfex 2-inch wheel spacer, and I really like them. They're good and beefy, very good quality. Before I slide that up on there, we're just gonna give the threads a little drop of blue thread lock. Definitely don't want your spacers coming loose. Use this small gun just to run everything up on there and get it, make sure everything's good and centered. Just give them a little snug, and then I'm gonna make sure the parking brake is set. That's a big advantage of the CF Motos. I love the parking brake and use it quite a bit. That lets you torque these rear ones without having to get anything to hold the hub in place. So we're going to run this up. I think 86 foot-pounds is the torque spec. So we're going to go 86. Lock it off. Now you have a properly installed and torqued wheel spacer. So next we'll put the tire on and get it back on the ground. set the brake again. And torque the lug nuts. Alright, we'll get it back on the ground and roll it.